So, is there a monkey in our family?
Definitely yes.
No honest scientist would ever say yes.
Yes, they will and do.
That's the Reader's Digest version. That's the popularized version. No scientist will tell you that there's a monkey in your ancestry, because we don't know that, and there's no reason to assume that.
Yes, we do know that, and it's not an assumption. It's something we can actually prove taxonomically, both morphologically and genetically. And not every scientist understands this, of course. Anthropologists like myself usually do, because we're the people who study people. Primatologists, the people who study primates, often know that too, because people are primates. But paleoprimatologists certainly know this, because they study the whole primate collective, whether extant or extinct. They know where we came from. So let's talk to one, a demonstrably honest one, a PhD student of paleoprimatology who also makes brilliant educational content on YouTube. I'll put a link to her channel in the description below. So, Erica, how is it that we actually do know that there definitely are monkeys in our ancestry?
Because the criteria that lands both us and chimpanzees in Anthropoidea, Catarrhinae, and Hominidae is the same.
Let's break that down. What is Anthropoidea? It's a taxonomic clade. The name means like unto man. And surely you would agree that mankind is like unto men, right? Of course we are. We would have to be like us if we are us. And that same clade has another name too, Simiiformes, which is a Latin name that means monkeys. Catarrhinae are the Old World monkeys, a group which also includes apes. Gorillas, chimpanzees, and humans are all hominids. We're all in the taxonomic family Hominidae, which is the category of great apes. Now, pioneer biologist Carolus Linnaeus figured this out almost 300 years ago, and now geneticists are proving that he got it right, and paleontologists have found a whole lot of intermediate forms in the fossil record to illustrate exactly how all that happened. So it turns out we have lots of facts and evidence to show how we know that there really are monkeys in your family, and that you're still a monkey by definition right now.
All we know is all living things come from living things, and living things didn't always have a spine. Now you can make of that whatever you want. But it's speculation.
No, this isn't speculation like your religious beliefs are. This is something we can verify objectively. We know a lot more than you don't. We know more about this than you can imagine. And let me try to give you a hint. I'll keep it very simple for you. Within animals, all the different types of animals there are or have ever been, there is only one group that has vertebrae. They are called vertebrates. And there's a subset of vertebrates with adaptations for life on land, most notably 4 legs. So they're called tetrapods, meaning they're based on a template of having 4 feet. And this applies even to snakes and whales, because there are fossils of both showing that they too are based on a template of having once had 4 legs. And within tetrapods, there is one subset that also has mammaries, and they're called mammals. I'm skipping a whole lot of intermediate groups like Placentalia and Boreoeutheria, just to keep it simple as possible for the rabbi. Now, primates are a group of Boreoeutherian mammals that live in complex social groups, which tend to enhance our ability to empathize, communicate, coordinate, and comprehend, and to build familial bonds and, with a social hierarchy. Primates also have the advantage of having both enlarged brains and opposable thumbs, 2 things that work great together. And some other animals have dexterous hands but tiny brains, while others have brilliant minds but that are trapped in bodies that cannot manipulate or experiment the way we can. So there's no way for them to progress the way we have. Even though most of these other animals have complex social networks, there's only so far they can go without both the knowing and the doing. So all these animals with only one or the other count as yet another argument against intelligent design. But there's more to primates than just the uniquely advantageous combination of brains and brawn. We are also defined by having optical orbits that are fully enclosed in bone, which is rare in mammals, and our eyes are forward-oriented for binocular vision, owing primarily to the requirement of depth perception in the trees. And eating fruit put pressure on to develop color vision. We don't have the best vision, and we can see more colors than most other animals can, but there's still some other animals who can see more colors than we can. And throughout taxonomy, each ancestral or parent category has at least 2 daughter clades, and each of those also has 2 subcategories descending from them, and so on. What that means is that there are 2 sets of primates. Wet-nosed primates have wet noses, like dogs and cattle and many other boreoeutherian mammals have. We, however, are dry-nosed primates. That makes us haplorhines. The dry-nosed primates are divided into 2 groups too. Tarsiiforms, which includes tarsiers, of course, and simiiforms, also known as monkeys. And whether you call this clade Anthropoidea or whether you call it Simiiformes doesn't matter. Both are correct. It's the same thing. Either way, it means we are monkeys by definition.
The Torah, on the other hand, says that the world has a creator who has an end goal.
And there's another book that says that the earth was created by a committee of extraterrestrial mice so that our world would serve as a sort of biological computer extended to run an extended processing experiment. And there's another book, much older than the Torah, which says that the world was created by successive generations of gods, and that the 6th generation created humans so that we would complete creation agriculturally such that the 7th divine generation could rest. Sound familiar? That's because that story was written by the grandfathers, the great-grandfathers of the biblical authors. The old Babylonian gods refer to themselves collectively in plural as the Elohim, which is why when Judaism reduced their pantheon down to just one god, he still uses the royal we. At least he does in the myth of creation that was obviously influenced by Enuma Elish, the world's oldest creation myth. And most of the time, your god refers to himself as singular because these are other stories that were based on other stories that might have originally been about only one god, albeit not your god, because your god hadn't been invented yet. Originally, it was a handful of gods who said, "Let us create man in our image." And they made 7 male and 7 female figurines, which they enchanted by breathing the breath of life into them. Then a couple thousand years later, the people who wrote the Torah borrowed some of the literary elements of that earlier pagan creation myth, like in Genesis 1:27, where it says that the Elohim created a collection of men and women together all at the same time. But that's different from Genesis 2, where God only created one man alone and then created a woman by another process later on. The difference is because that story was inspired by another Mesopotamian myth. And this is how your religion and your God was cobbled together out of earlier fables.
It's not that he's good at creating worlds.
Tell me about it.
He's not.
No, I know. This world looks like it evolved without a creator.
Creating worlds is not his thing.
I guess that's why it took him 4 days of working on this one rock, and he still wasn't done with it before he realized that he needed the rest of the cosmos too. And then he just sneezed out 11 jillion galaxies all at once, trillions of suns and planets and other things, all in the same act of divine flatulence. But then he spent another couple days still detailing this one tiny world. How could this one puny planet require a whole week of concentrated effort while everything else, everywhere else, was farted out in the same instant? As if those billions of stars are suns like our own, or maybe larger, or they're faint, distant galaxies, each with billions of suns and billions of planets, with some more interesting than our own. But the biblical authors thought that they were no more than lights in the dome of our flat, disc-shaped world, which is exactly what the Bible says they are. So God didn't have to create all those other things. It's more like he just had to flip the switch to turn the lights on, because that's the way the biblical authors described them, as just simply lights in the sky. Of course, Genesis reads like that because it was written by ignorant primitives who thought that the earth was the biggest thing in the universe. These mere fallible people who wrote the stories in the Torah made up imaginary gods with magical powers because they didn't understand how anything really is, that there is no God, that the earth isn't flat, and nor is it the center or the beginning of the universe in any respect like the Torah says that it is. Because everything the Bible says about the earth in relation to the rest of the cosmos is laughably wrong. If God had written that, then it wouldn't say anything that it does. It says all that because it was written by ignorant, bigoted, superstitious primitives who didn't know any better.
His thing is oneness and holiness. And he created the world to achieve a greater oneness and a greater holiness.
Now you're just making shit up or parroting what others have already made up. If your God existed and he cared at all about oneness and holiness, then why does the universe have so many billions of light years of wasted space where this world is so separate from everything else? If he wanted oneness and holiness, then why did he divide the people he created into chosen and ignored groups, where he turned some of his creation against the others, or he left them to make up their own religions and pantheons without any guidance from him at all? Why is it that everything that happens in your Bible is restricted to this one circle, ignoring everyone else, everywhere else, who would never even hear of your God until colonialism showed how unholy your God can be? There is no oneness or holiness anywhere in religious history.
There's an end goal. We don't exist to exist. We don't exist to survive. We don't survive to survive. There's an end goal.
You haven't thought much about your end goal. It certainly isn't oneness or holiness, because that isn't found anywhere in the Hebrew Bible, nor in the Christian nor Muslim revisions thereof. So it really comes down to this, Rabbi. I've noticed that believers want there to be a meaning of life. You say you want to believe in something bigger than yourself, but at the same time, you want to pretend as if you exist for a purpose and that you're so important that you're the reason the universe exists. That's not humility. That's arrogance.
And for that alone, a rational mind would say, if I have a choice, and I do, if I have a choice, then rationally, I choose to believe that which enhances my life, not that which impoverishes my life.
There it is. There's the admission that you choose to make believe whatever you want to believe simply because you want to believe that. Doesn't matter what the truth is. You don't care about that. You just want to pretend. And as you continue to demonstrate, you are not above lying in defense of your truth. Now, some people say that the truth will set you free. Others say that the truth hurts. You're obviously in the latter camp. I'm in the group that says that knowledge is power. You're in the group that says ignorance is bliss. So you make believe on faith, which is the polar opposite of rationality, because it's not based on reason or logic, because you don't have any of either one. Your belief is unreasonable, illogical, and irrational. It's also dishonest, which is why I have to reject faith. I'm not a pretender. I cannot choose to believe whatever I want to like you do. However, that said, if I believed as you do, then I would be as lost as you are. I've met people who don't know what was invented first, radio or automobiles. They don't know the order of the most historic events. I've known people who could not tell me what states or countries lie to the north, south, east, or west of wherever they live. So they're lost in the sense that they don't know where they are either. So I can't be that way. I mean, I want to know what I am and where I am geographically, chronologically, taxonomically, and so on. Knowing science and all that as I do definitely enhances my life far more than your feeble religion could. Were I to believe as you do, as if everything we can show to be true is just an illusion, if I believed that your favorite fables were true, that would impoverish my life profoundly, because it would mean that facts cannot be evidence, because nothing means anything anymore, because it's blindly and obediently believing whatever you're told to believe simply because you were told to believe it matters more than being good or evil or smart or anything else, where everything is ultimately meaningless and arbitrary at the capricious whim of an inexplicably insecure narcissist who threatens an inescapable eternity of stagnation, even in heaven, where you'd be trapped in mindless servitude of an indomitable telepathic despot who cannot be reasoned with, and where good people are damned to indefensibly mindless and merciless torture for all of eternity simply because they didn't believe in the right set of lies, or they didn't believe the lies of the right group of clergymen. It's hard for me to imagine anything more horrible than what you say enhances life. No, sir. What you believe is a lie, or rather a body of lies that has definitely and unnecessarily impoverished millions of lives since its inception and still does today.
To know that God has an end goal and that we are not here merely to evolve, or as some say, to evolve into extinction. Of course, 10 billion years from now. Not exactly stuff that keeps you up at night. But philosophically, very deflating.
First off, you don't know that God has an end goal. You don't even know whether a God exists, and it evidently doesn't. You just say that he does, asserting baseless speculation as if it was a matter of fact. Faith is pretending to know things you don't know, which is why faith is inherently dishonest. You're also just moving the goalposts. We live and grow and develop as individuals. So you can tell a child of 5 years old that maybe they'll die 80 years from now, and that shouldn't keep them up at night. But if you're really afraid of dying after you grow up, then you might make up excuses to pretend as if you won't really be dead or that you'll still be alive in some sense somewhere. Oh, and our species won't last 10 million years, much less 10 billion. Just as the Latin language evolved into Spanish, French, and Italian, our surviving descendants will diversify into new variants distinct from what we are now. Hopefully, your religion will be extinct by then rather than us, and those people will govern themselves by a more respectable body of morally defensible ethics.
We evolve to survive, and we will not survive. That doesn't give you a lot of enthusiasm for life.
On the contrary, and people tend to value most that which is rare. This includes moments that cannot last. Life is one such moment. It would mean so much less if it just kept going on forever and ever.
To live with the belief that we evolved over 5 billion years into human beings so that we will become extinct in another 2 billion years. What exactly is the sanctity of life?
There is no sanctity of life, not in the sense of it being holy, because holiness means separate from nature, and we're not. We're part of nature, not apart from it. That's what gives us our oneness, which means that we are one with everything, which is a spiritual pinnacle. You can't have both oneness and holiness because they're opposites. Nor does life have sanctity in the sense of being sacred or connected with God, since there is no God. Now, there certainly isn't any sanctity of life in the Bible either, where self-appointed prophets pretending to speak for God demand torture, death, and genocide as punishments for everything. But apart from your twisted fables and grisly folklore, life has value. Life is precious because it is both rare and short. If you only have a few dollars left or a few years left, spend them wisely. Enjoy what you can while you can with those who can help you make the best of it and who will remember you fondly for it. And if you want your life to have meaning, which is not necessary, but if you do, then you have to decide what you want your life to mean, and then you have to work to that end.
That God created the world but has no interest? Not much better.
Then why do you believe in the Bible? For me, it's not even a question of why would I, but how could I? Nor would it matter, because even if there was a God, the Bible would still be verifiably false on so many of its points, and evolution would still be demonstrably real. Even if your God really existed, we are bound by human laws, and history will be our judge.
Intelligent design, very popular these days, at least controversial. Intelligent design doesn't mean anything.
What intelligent design means is the belief that life did not evolve by natural selection of random mutations and so on, but was instead conjured out of nothing by magic. Excuse me, supernatural miracles.
Evolution is also an intelligent design.
No, opposites are mutually exclusive. They are not identical.
If we evolve to survive, to adapt to the new environment, that's intelligent.
No, it's emergent. Patterns of complexity incidentally emerging from the bottom up rather than being deliberately orchestrated from the top down.
And how do we do that? Because there is a DNA molecule whose only job is to direct the other molecules and tell them where to go and what to do. There is intelligence. Whether you believe in God or not, there is intelligence.
If by that you mean either a collection of information or the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills, then I will grant that the universe has demonstrated the ability to acquire these, though it evidently did not always have these, and DNA was obviously not intentionally designed to have this either.
The question is, this intelligence that exists in nature, does it know what it's doing?
Obviously not.
Does it have an end goal?
Doesn't have goals.
Belief in God doesn't mean believing in an intelligent design or intelligent designer. That is unquestionable.
I question that.
The question is, this intelligent designer, what does he want?
To exist outside your mind?
If he wants nothing, then we're back to zero again.
You've always been at zero. There is no designer.
The good news is that this intelligent designer also has a desire. There is an end goal, and it is not extinction.
You're just making up assertions wherein you're pretending to know things you don't really know and that are either not evidently true or they're evidently not true.
On the contrary, the end goal is eternity. That which was not becomes.
So everything came from nothing?
And now, that which is temporary acquires immortality.
We don't have souls.
That's called evolving.
No, it isn't.
When you go from nothing to something, and this something is temporary, but the temporary something acquires eternity, I can go with that kind of evolution.
That's not any kind of evolution at all, nor is it real.
That can be described as progress.
Evolution isn't a march of progress.
Now I understand the sanctity of life.
You don't have any idea what you're talking about, Rabbi Friedman.
A rational human being chooses that because it's good for him. It serves him better. Rational people do what serves them better.
How would you know?
We don't worship science.
No one ever did.
Oh, this makes sense? Yes, no, maybe? A little?
Not a bit. You're utterly clueless, old man.
That's the kind of faith we can live with, because it makes life livable, worth living.
So you admit to a faith that allows and requires that you ignore evident realities to make believe something else instead, something that doesn't make any sense at all, and that is demonstrably wrong on every testable assertion. Lying to yourself and others does not make anyone's life better.
The other kind of faith strips life of all sanctity, of all significance, of all importance.
That's another lie. Accepting science is not faith. It's the polar opposite of faith. It's what we do when we want to improve our understanding, because then it matters what the truth really is. The very notion of an eternal afterlife devalues the one life we really do get, stripping it of its real significance and importance.
So we celebrate life.
No, we do, the unbelievers. You, followers of Abrahamic religion, you celebrate death, longing to be dead.
We celebrate life because it came from God and is becoming more like God.
But life is not becoming imaginary, and it didn't come from your imaginary God either. Everything you say is questionable. Everything you believe is questionable. You're questionable.
That's significant. A universe that came from nowhere and is going nowhere is not significant.
Well, aren't you a whiny little bitch? Rabbi Friedman, a number of your fans have contacted me complaining about this series. They said that this is a one-sided criticism, that I gave you no chance to defend yourself. But this is a response to your presentation, Evolution versus God, which is a false dichotomy. You should have called it Religious Extremist Bibliolatry versus Science. Therein, you lied about disproving Darwin. Did science have a chance to defend itself against your one-sided expressions of uneducated bigotry? As some have suggested that I should challenge you to a debate, but I don't see how I could do that without looking like a bully, because you don't know anything, and you're unprepared. You couldn't win this even if you found a champion to debate it for you. You're welcome to post another video in response to this series, but you won't, because you can't. Because you've been shown to be embarrassingly wrong on every single point you've tried to make throughout your whole presentation. The only thing you can do is admit that honestly and show some integrity. Or you can just ignore this series and pretend that you don't really have time to address it. I think we both already know which course you'll take.